Well, this is Jeff Cranford from Links Players International, and I am here with one of my dear friends, Tom Randall. Tom is the chaplain on the senior tour, and he travels with these guys. How many weeks a year, Tom, are you out there with those guys?
26.
26 weeks a year. And I wanted to take this opportunity, we're here this morning in our studio, just to let you get a chance to get to know Tom. Many of you will maybe have heard Tom through the years or whatever, but I want you to have an opportunity to get to know Tom this morning and kind of get us an update on what's going on out on the tour. I can tell you from the things that I've heard over the last few years, it's really been an explosion of faith on the senior tour, and many of the guys have come to know Jesus through this process. And so Tom, welcome, man. I'm so thrilled to have you here in La Quinta with us.
Thanks, Jeff.
This week. I think to get started, first of all, I mean, you were a missionary in the Philippines. Obviously, Tom played professional basketball. You can go back through that a little bit. How did you get from there to being on, and not even a golfer, really? I mean, you're loving to play golf. I think you played 36 holes yesterday.
I did, but I wouldn't be classified as a good golfer.
Well, how did you get from the Philippines as a missionary and then back over here and then all of a sudden find yourself out on the road with these guys for all these years?
Missionary in the Philippines for 36 years now, and we still have our ministry in the Philippines and love it dearly. But we had to come back about 13 years ago because of health reasons and security reasons in the Philippines. And I was in Atlanta, Georgia area up in the mountains, and I was praying about what should I do while I'm back in the States, because we would go back and forth.
Right.
And I got a phone call, and the phone call was from a Hall of Fame golfer named Larry Nelson, wonderful guy, great golfer, but a guy who loves the Lord dearly. And he said, listen, I just want to offer you an opportunity if you're willing to come out and be the chaplain on the Champions Tour, which would be the senior tour. And I said, well, Larry, I'm a pro basketball player. I'm not really a golfer, though I like to play. He said, well, maybe we could look by that because you were recommended by some other people. And I said, and I didn't know Larry. And so he said, well, listen, I'll tell you what, I'll do it for a couple weeks or a month till you get the right guy, because I am home and I have a little time. And that was 13 years ago.
Unbelievable.
And after we saw what started to happen and the momentum of people responding to the Lord and the need out on the tour, my wife and I just felt like we should stay committed to it. And so we're doing both the chaplaincy here, and then we do our missionary work in the Philippines as well, and we go back and forth.
Well, Tom, what would you say, over the last 13 years, what have been some of your greatest challenges as you go into, I mean, guys, a lot like our Links fellowships, they go in, guys pretty settled in their feelings about faith and different things like that. How is there obviously it's God, but tell us about some of the breakthroughs and some of the guys that have come and said, hey, you know what, this Jesus may be who he said he was.
I think they just needed opportunity. It's a very isolated community of people and a unique lifestyle where they travel a lot. They're independent contractors, so they have to take care of themselves, own expenses. They don't have a buddy or team like I had to watch out for you. And so, to tell you the truth, I just tried to be their friend. And a friend that they could trust that wasn't going to say anything to anybody else about the friendship or things that they said, because they're so public and can go so public with something that's said. And in those friendships, I started, if there was a need, I tried to fulfill it, even if it was caddying for somebody or doing a wedding for their children or a funeral for their folks or whatever came up, or they were going through some difficulties in their marriage. I just tried to be their friend and say, listen, what can I do to help, and talk with them over it. And they began to come on Friday night because of that. And that Friday night, I always try to share Jesus every Friday night in some form. Whether it's about anger or competition, it's about Jesus in the end. And a number of guys and their wives started to come to Christ. And pretty soon we were looking out there, and there were 80 or 100 players and wives and some TV people and caddies. And we just thought this is really an opportunity to help this environment grow in Christ. And it happened. And one good story I'd love to tell is like sorry.
It's okay.
Bruce and Rose Litsky, wonderful people, and great golfer, and everybody thought, how can this guy win so much at golf? He never practices. In fact, one time he told me the story. He said they put a banana in his bag when he went home to see if he would practice. When he came to the next tournament, off came the bag, and there were the rotten bananas, So he really didn't practice at home. He loves to fish, but him and Rose came to Christ got committed to the Lord, said, listen, I'd like to be baptized. I said, well, great. When would you like to do it? And they said, well, we'd like you to do it, and I'd like to do it out on tour so my peers could see it. So I said, well, that's wonderful. Well, the next week we were in Austin. So I called Ben Crenshaw, and I said, Ben, listen, we're going to have the meeting at your house this year. He said, oh, yeah, we're all set. I said, we're going to have a little addition. He said, what? I said, Bruce and Rose want to get baptized. Do you have a swimming pool? And Bruce says, I got a great pool. I'll heat it up for you, Tom.
I love it.
Well, Bruce and Julie, they just went all out. We had a big party. We had open bar. We had food, everything. And so we got Bruce and Rose down into the pool and baptized them, and they were giving their testimony. It was the most beautiful thing. And everyone's standing around with their martinis and their wine and stuff. And my poor wife, she's a Baptist. She said, oh, Tom, is this okay? I said, don't worry. It doesn't matter. They're baptized and they love the Lord. And that effect that they had on the rest of the tour was fantastic. And so I just saw that the guys themselves were the greatest testimony to each other. As one guy would see another guy change, he would say, you know, maybe I need to look into this. And so they kind of almost discipled each other.
Right. Well, you know, there's a great crossover, because we've got a lot of guys, members at clubs, wanting to reach out to their friends, not knowing quite what to say, how to enter a conversation, how to invite a guy, what are all the theological parameters, and do they have to buy into everything? But the transition can actually be a lot easier than feeling like you've got to give them a gospel presentation the first time you meet them, or the first time you enter. How do you best transition into that, being in the missionary fields, being on the field as long as you have?
Especially difficult, because in the mission field you can win Filipinos to come to Christ within 5 minutes of knowing them. They're so easy to befriend and get a relationship with, where these guys, sometimes it's 7, 8 years. Raymond Floyd, I think it was 7 years before he knew my name. But when him and Marie came to Christ, what a transformation of their lives. And having the privilege of sharing Christ with him, it came through years of waiting for an opportunity when he talked to me. And just being there to serve and be a friend of somebody and know they can count on you, and just go from guy to guy. There's always going to be a guy who has a need. Just in December, Dana Quigley's son, Devin, who caddies out on tour, he's a professional golfer himself, lovely guy. All the guys know him. You know, it's kind of everybody knows everybody's kids and stuff after playing together for 30 years. He was in a severe accident in West Palm Beach. He drove his car up underneath a 18-wheeler and cut off the top of the car, and it killed him, literally, and they brought him back to life in the car. They had to dig him out of the car. It took an hour. But they got him back to life, and right now he's in a coma. And but when Dana called me 3 a.m, and he was just almost hysterical, and he thought he was going to die, because they thought he wasn't going to make it. You know how that happens, and he did make it. But at this point, he's still in a coma, and this is several months later. So Karen, my wife, we prayed right there in the morning, and by noon, she had me on a flight to West Palm Beach. Right. And my wife's feeling is that if there's a time when he needs you, this is the time, and he's your friend. So I went, and Dana picked me up at the airport, took me back to his house, and I stayed at his house for 2 weeks. And all we did for 2 weeks was we'd go to the hospital and pray for Devin, then we'd go home, and he would open up his home for his friends, his golfing professional buddies, Devin's professional buddies, relatives, anybody who was one could come on over, and they'd have 40 or 50 people there some nights for dinner. And then he'd say, Tom, would you just share for our 40 minutes and answer questions if anyone has a question? And so all I did was that. We had 11 people give their life to Christ. And we did baptisms of 9 of them right in Dana's pool in that 2 weeks. And then I had to rush home and go to the Philippines, so I stayed longer. But the idea of just being willing to be there at that time and be their friend, it's a commitment in ministry, I think, to be somebody's friend and be available when they need you at the right time. I think coming to Christ is easier that way for them, because they see Christ in a real affectionate way.
Yeah. Well, man, I and women as well, Link's friends, I got to tell you, this is so significant to recognize that you don't have to know the answer to every theological question. You don't have to know chapter and verse on every area. If you go into your club and say, you know what, maybe God's called me to be available, to in a sense be a chaplain of my own club with a group, a missional community of other men and women who are willing to walk the streets and pray over homes behind the walls of your country club, or willing to pray for people and be there for them, even when it's not convenient, even when it may necessitate catching a flight, just to sit outside a hospital room, even if they've not invited you in. The impact that can have in Christ is profound. And what I see and have learned through Tom so much in my own personal walk with Jesus is relational ministry. And that's the way Jesus did it. He went and he made friends along the way. He just invited Zacchaeus out of the sycamore tree just to come down and hang out. And before Zacchaeus could barely hit the ground, he had already repented. And all Jesus did was say, I'm going to have dinner with you. And so there's a profound story in these things. So, Tom, thank you for your time to come into the studio today. And
you're welcome.
And I've got to tell you, if you ever have the opportunity or in and around a senior tour event and you find out that Tom is speaking or sharing one of his stories, you need to be there, because he is a man of the Lord, and his life, just when you're with him, you just feel Jesus. Well, you need to become that same person as well. You need to be that person at your own club where people get around you and they feel Jesus. So, Tom, thanks so much, and we love you, and we're going to be praying for you and the ministry on the senior tour. And
thank you very much.
Anyway, you guys have a great day, and God bless you.
God bless.